What if God's plan for your life looks nothing like what you picture? You wouldn't be crazy. Faith just doesn't always feel logical. Because what if obedience isn't about having all the right answers, but about trusting God's character? Joseph obeyed when he had every reason to walk away. That wasn't just blind faith, that was complete trust in God. Let's get straight to it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Everyday Podcast, where we talk about what it looks like to live life with Jesus every day. It's your boy, Zach. I am stoked that you're here. Today, we are talking about true faith. Let's get it. One of my favorite topics to talk about. See, faith isn't just about your belief. Faith is about taking steps. The measure of your faith and the true display of your faith comes down to, do you obey when things don't make sense? We think that faith is about being 100% certain all the time, but the truth is that no one is 100% certain on anything. And if they are, they're probably lying to you. Like, bro, I am 100% certain that God told me this. Like, dude, you are out of your mind, first of all, and I don't know that I could trust you. I heard a preacher say one time, faith starts at 51%. That's when you cross that line of you're like, 50-50, like it might work out, it might not, to where you're like, okay, well, I am just a tiny bit sure, a little bit more sure. I don't know the proper way to say that, but you're just a little bit more sure that this is going to work out. You're 51% sure that what God is telling you to do is from Him, and 49% sure you're like, I don't know, it's kind of a toss-up, we'll see, we'll figure it out. But faith starts at 51%. It starts when you say, God, I don't know if this is actually it or not, but let's go. Let's try it anyways. Having faith is great, but if your faith just looks like you believing something and not ever acting on it, then I would question if you really have faith at all. Last week, we talked a little bit about the genealogy in Matthew 1, and I want to kind of finish off talking about the importance of that genealogy, where it talks about Joseph and Joseph naming Jesus, because Joseph was so significant in this story. I feel like Joseph is just slept on, dude. Like, people talk about Mary all the time, they love her, but Joseph kind of slept on and overlooked a lot, which, dude, we got to give it up for our boy Joseph, right? Because he was actually so significant in this story. Because maybe you've been in a similar place where God has spoken something to you and it doesn't make sense. God tells you to do something and you're like, are you sure? Are you sure you're talking to me? Is that word for me actually, or did you mean that for somebody else? Because that does not make sense. In my first episode, I talked about being on that houseboat, and the instructor, the camp guy said the only thing he told us was go left, and that was all we knew. And it didn't make sense. We were going for so far. We didn't see anybody. It didn't look like how we thought it was going to look, but we just kept going left because that was what we knew that he had said. Sometimes when God speaks, it doesn't always make sense, but you never know what is on the other side of your obedience. And obedience looks different all the time. Sometimes it can look like staying and waiting, or it can look like going and taking a big leap of faith that's so crazy everyone around you is like, bro, what are you doing? But both are still faith, and both still matter. Joseph had every reason not to marry Mary. He was stoked. He's about to get married to this girl. The whole town is like celebrating them being married. And then all of a sudden she's pregnant. And they're like, dude, Joseph, was that you? He's like, no, dude, that wasn't me. She says it's God. And everyone's like, you're stupid. Like, do you really think God got her pregnant? Like, that's not how this works. You understand that? And Joseph is like, yeah, you're right. Okay, well, I don't know what is going on. Maybe I'm going to just divorce her. Right? So he's thinking through this. He doesn't want to do it publicly to bring shame on her. He knows that causes so much shame. So he wants to do it in a quiet way. But then as he's thinking and considering it, an angel appears to him, sent by God, and says, don't divorce her. Don't leave her. Then the angel tells him, you are going to name him Jesus. You're going to name her son Jesus, and he will be the savior of the world. He will be the Messiah. Now, that's crazy, because he had an angel come to him and appear to him. And he's like, okay, well, it's pretty hard. It would be pretty hard to like ignore an angel, right? We don't all have angels coming and talking to us. And I think we would be like, yeah, if an angel showed up and told me what to do, then I would for sure do it. But you still have to think about this. The level of faith that it took for Joseph to be obedient still is crazy. he still had a choice. He could have obeyed or he could have disobeyed. And I think because the Bible says that he was a righteous man, we can see how his obedience makes sense. He had a fear of the Lord. He had a fear of God to where when he heard God speak, he would act on it. When he heard the angel come and appear to him, he responded in faith. And he was like, you know what? I don't know what this means, what this looks like, but sure, why not? Let's go. Let's see. Let's test it out. Right. And then the next few chapters, God appears to him, gives him dreams, and then Joseph responds. God speaks to Joseph and he acts. God speaks to Joseph and he acts. I can't snap. It's embarrassing. You probably can't hear it in the mic anyways. But God speaks to Joseph and then he acts. He didn't know what it was going to look like. And it was something that cost him, that would have cost him his whole reputation. People would have looked at Mary and Joseph with so much shame. Like, wow, you had sex outside of marriage. Like, I can't believe you would do that. To us, culture, it's been so normalized now that it's not even shamed. But back then it was such a shameful thing. That was a crime against God, and that carried more weight back then. To us, it's just like whatever. It shouldn't be, but that's just the reality of what it is, right? So we don't carry that same weight or that same tension. You don't understand. You might not understand how intense of scrutiny they would have been under. People would have been looking at them, judging them, criticizing them. And Joseph stood by Mary the whole time and was like, no, I am with you in this because God said. Sometimes it looks reckless. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense, and it seems like it is the worst possible thing for you to do. But will you obey even if it doesn't make sense? Because Joseph obeyed, he fulfilled the prophecies that God had declared, that God had spoken. He fulfilled a prophecy that was spoken about Jesus. It says that Jesus was going to be born in the family line of David. We talked about the genealogy in the last episode. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. I'll put the link below. But we talked about the genealogy and how Jesus redeemed a family line of liars, murderers, adulterers, prostitutes, craziness. But the only way that he was able to do that was because of Joseph. Mary did not come from the family line of David. Joseph did. And Joseph never actually participated in the action of creating Jesus, and Jesus never came from Joseph, but by the very act of him naming Jesus in Matthew chapter 1, if you go to it and you see it, it says Joseph named him Jesus. If you think about the importance of it, culturally, if the man names a child, that signifies adoption, saying this child belongs to me. He's in my family. He belongs to my family line. So Joseph saying his name is Jesus, claims him, puts him in the family line of David, and fulfills the prophecy. You never know what's on the other side of your obedience. You never know what is going to change when you just say yes to Jesus, when you just respond in faith and you go and you do something that doesn't make sense, that looks reckless, that might harm your reputation with your friends or your family. Stepping out in faith is risky, but it's something that God asks of us every day. He wouldn't put us in danger. He wouldn't put us in harm's way. He just wants to know if we would trust him. One time, I remember God asked me to give away my whole savings account. And before you get impressed, you're like, wow, Zach, your savings, like, I'm not trying to impress anyone. It wasn't a lot of money. You wouldn't be impressed if you knew how much money was in it anyways. It felt like a lot to me. But I remember God telling me to give my savings away. And I remember who he told me to give it to. And I was like, are you sure? This person doesn't really have a relationship with you. And two, it seems like they're not really good with their money. So I don't know if that's the best place to give my money to. But I felt like he said to do it. I've been doing missions since 2016. This would have been maybe a year or two into missions full time for me, where I was living month to month by support from friends, family, churches, people that would sow into what we're doing. And I still live like that. But back then it was the early stages of my life, early stages of ministry. I didn't really have a big network. So I didn't have a ton of money that was coming in monthly to where I was able to live comfortably. I was very stingy. I would save everything that I could. I would put any amount that I had into savings because I was afraid that next month I wouldn't have enough money. I was afraid that there would be something that would come up that I wouldn't be able to afford. So I would just save everything. As soon as I spent what I needed to spend and bought only what I needed to buy, I would save everything. It taught me good stewardship. And I think that because of that, God has blessed me and has helped me learn how to steward my money in a financially wise way to where I'm able to do things that I want to do, pursue things that I want to pursue, because God has blessed that stewardship. But at the time, I was letting money control me. I would make decisions based off of how much money I had in my bank account. If I felt like God was telling me to do something, I would look at my bank account and I would hesitate and I'd be like, I don't know if I really want to do it. Because I was fearful. I was like, what if I don't have money? What if I can't pay for it? I don't want to be in debt. Those are my fears. So I would save as much as I could every month. And I would always have this peace in my heart, as long as I knew that there was some money left in my savings account. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'm good. If someone doesn't give me money this month, if everybody stopped giving, I'd be fine because I have enough money. That was what I thought. That was how I lived. I was like, as long as I have my savings account, I am good. I started trusting my savings account more than I was trusting God. I started trusting my own ability to save a small amount of money every month. I started trusting that more than trusting the provider who has all of the money in the world and doesn't need anything from us. I really thought that I had it all under control. So to give my savings away at this point in my life, it was reckless, stupid even. People, if anybody knew, I didn't tell anybody, but if anybody knew, they'd be like, what are you doing, dog? Like, you're crazy. But I emptied my savings and I gave it to this person with like tears in my eyes, because I was like, God, I don't know how you're going to provide. I don't know how you're going to take care of me. And I don't know why you want me to give it to this person. I know that they don't love you, and it doesn't seem like they really have a value for money. So it feels like I'm just giving this away for nothing. And I gave them the money, and I felt like in that moment to even just like tell them the gospel, preach the gospel a little bit, and be like, hey, God gave so much more than this for you. And I gave them the money, and it was an emotional moment. And I was like, wow, like I feel so good. Like, God, you're doing something in my heart. And then I was expecting even the verse where it says like, test God in this. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to turn around and this person's life is going to be completely changed. My bank account I'm going to get a check that's going to double it. Like, I was kind of expecting these things, right? And then none of that happened. This person didn't give their life to Jesus for years. They're walking with God now, and it's a beautiful story, but they didn't give their life to Jesus then. My bank account didn't all of a sudden just double or triple. And I remember the whole situation of why I felt like I was supposed to give this person their car. We thought it got stolen, but then it turns out it was just repoed, and it was like a huge thing, and it was dramatic. And I was like, dude, I just gave my money to this, and it feels like I just wasted that. Like, I should have given it to another missionary or to a church or something. And I was like, dang, I should have done something different. But I realized, I was like, dang, I was just being obedient. I was responding to what God was saying and being obedient. The outcome was not my responsibility. What God wanted to do with that, how he wanted to work with that, wasn't my responsibility. I didn't need to worry about that. My focus was just on my obedience. That's what my responsibility was my obedience. Outcome is God's job. My job is just being obedient. But after I did that, I remember my finances and my view on money completely changed. It was no longer controlling me. I no longer lived in fear of not having enough. There are times where I still will get a little hesitant, or I'll stress a little bit about finances, and then I'm like, oh no, God takes care of me. God's always come through. He's always provided. And since then, I've seen God bless me more than I could have ever imagined. I've been debt-free and I've traveled the world doing missions. That's a miracle on its own. But money had this like chokehold on me that I had to break, that God had to break. And the only way that he knew that would happen was if I let it go. The thing that I was holding so close to me, I had to let go. And it looked reckless, and it was probably stupid. And if you do this without feeling like God is telling you to do it, it might be stupid, and it might put you in a financial situation that you don't need to be in. But it was what he was asking me to do, and I had to obey. This person, like I said, he never gave his life to Jesus for a few years. He never seemed like he was getting closer to it or anything. And recently, he gave his life to Jesus. And his story is incredible. The transformation is awesome. And I'm like, dang, God, thank you so much for doing something. I don't know if he remembers the story. I don't know if he remembers that I even did that, but that doesn't matter. What mattered in that moment was whether I was obedient or not. Was I responding to what God was asking me to do? Or was I going to continue trusting my money, continue to trusting that I had it under control, that I had to take care of myself? Because that was getting tired quick. Sometimes what God's asking you to do looks reckless, seems stupid, it feels irresponsible, but it's just stepping out in faith. It's just trusting God. And if you step out in faith and it doesn't work out, that's okay. you end up right back at the foot of the cross. You end up right back in the presence of God. We're saying, God, tell me what to do next. This didn't work out. I tried it. It didn't work. What do I need to do now? Joseph's obedience looked reckless and irresponsible. He was ruining his whole reputation. He was risking his whole reputation for a kid that wasn't even his because he had an angel appear to him. He could have told his friends, an angel of God appeared to me. And they would have been like, you're crazy, bro. Are you high? Like, what's wrong with you? You really think an angel appeared to you and you think that God made her pregnant? People would have rejected them. And he still chose to trust God and to be obedient. He feared God. He valued God's word. He was obedient. He listened to God and he responded with faith. What is God asking you to do that you're afraid of because it doesn't make sense? Comment below, share this with a friend. Your responsibility isn't how things play out because of your obedience. Your responsibility is just to obey. God's not asking you to figure everything out. He's just asking you to take that first step. What is it that you need to be obedient in? Do it. Trust God with the outcome. Trust God that the results that he is going to bring are so much better than you could force in your own will. You need to let go of your fear, surrender that to God, and trust him. Step out in obedience. That's what true faith looks like. It's not just blindly going and doing whatever. It's knowing who God is, trusting in his character, and responding to that. Knowing that God's going to take care of you and responding out of that. So comment below what that thing is that you are afraid of. Share this video with a friend and check out this next episode. We'll see you next time.